You wake up determined. You swear that today will be different. The plan is clear, the risk calculated, the mind cooler, but just a few minutes of screen time and the impulse starts whispering. You feel that slight tingling at the tips of your fingers, the same one that precedes every sequence of overtrades. The market hasn't even moved yet and your mind is already looking for a reason to act. You tell yourself it's just an opportunity, but deep down you know it's not the market calling you, it's anxiety disguised as intuition. It's the old mental impulse, the invisible engine that pushes you to trade too much and in the end, destroy the day. This impulse is treacherous. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it convinces you with logic. It makes it seem like being out of the market is a waste of time, as if the real danger were inactivity. And then, without noticing, you enter. You open a position without conviction just to feel like you're participating. The price moves a little in your favor, dopamine shows up, the brain registers pleasure, you feel like you got it right. But soon the movement reverses, and the same brain that was seeking relief now seeks revenge. The trade closes at stop, and the impulse reappears disguised as rationality. Just one more entry to recover. And so the day turns into a battlefield between your mind and your patience. The problem isn't technical, it's chemical, it's emotional, it's behavioral. The impulse that makes you overtrade doesn't arise on the platform, it arises in your relationship with control. From an early age, you were taught to believe that action equals progress, that standing still is failing, that the more you do, the closer you are to winning, except the market doesn't obey that logic. In trading, acting too much is synonymous with losing. Passivity is power. And that's exactly what most people can't stand. The silence between opportunities. Every click you make without reason reinforces the neurological circuit of addiction. You feed the same mechanism that destroys casino gamblers, small random rewards, sure, unpredictable profits that generate powerful chemical explosions. The mind learns to seek the stimulus, not the result. You no longer want to make money, you just want to feel what it feels like when you win. And when you lose, the system goes into withdrawal. That's where overtrading is born. The desperate attempt to recover the sensation, not the balance. This is the trader's true enemy. Not the market, but conditioning. The belief that external movement can calm internal chaos. When the screen stays still, you feel like you're wasting lifetime. Boredom turns into anxiety, and anxiety seeks action. But trading is the opposite of everything the human mind considers natural. It demands calm in the face of risk, patience in the face of gain, and inaction in the face of uncertainty. None of that generates dopamine. That's why the mental impulse is so dangerous. It convinces you to act precisely when the absence of action would be your greatest strength. Every trader has a trigger. Some overtrade after a loss, others after a gain, but everyone shares the same addiction, the need to feel in control. And control here is an illusion, because the market is unpredictable, and the more you try to dominate it, the more it shows you that real dominance begins within yourself. The professional understands this. He doesn't fight to eliminate the impulse, he observes it. He recognizes it as part of the game. The amateur tries to resist with willpower, and fails. The professional creates structure, routine, and metrics to neutralize instinct. He knows the market is a mirror. The chart only reflects the emotional state of the person looking at it. Every rushed entry is a silent confession. You are not at peace with waiting. And whoever doesn't master waiting will never master profit, because trading is made of intervals. Between one signal and another, there are long minutes of nothing. And it's in that nothing that the amateur destroys himself. He enters just to fill the void. The professional does not. He understands that the void is the true field of growth. He uses that time to observe, review, breathe. He doesn't seek emotion, he seeks efficiency. He knows that one right trade is worth more than 10 impulsive ones, because in the long run, consistency is compounded by the sum of decisions you didn't make. But there is something deeper. The impulse that makes you overtrade is just a symptom. The root is older. It is linked to the fear of missing opportunities, the famous FOMO. This fear comes from unconscious beliefs, the idea that if I don't act now, I'll never have another chance. This is a scarcity mindset, and every scarcity mindset turns the trader into a slave of haste. You don't trust time, you want the return now, but the market rewards those who think in terms of emotional compound interest, small doses of patience that accumulate exponential strength. Do you see? The market is a mirror of your relationship with life. The same impulse that makes you click too much is the one that makes you talk too much, promise too much, try to please too much. It's the same inability to be present without seeking relief. Trading just exposes what was already there. That's why it's so painful, because it shows you in real time who you are. Every wrong entry is a line from your unconscious printed on a chart. And if you don't accept reading those lines, you'll repeat them until you break. There are traders who spend years blaming the market, the algorithm, liquidity, the broker. But the real collapse isn't technical, it's mental. It's the moment you stop realizing the problem is internal. You want to change the system, but you don't want to change yourself. And meanwhile, the mental impulse keeps guiding you like an invisible autopilot. It makes you believe that every new attempt is different, but they're all the same cycle. Anxiety, action, relief, guilt, promise, repetition. Think, how many times have you already destroyed a day that was going well? How many times did you close the morning in the green and give everything back in the afternoon because there was still time? This is the classic overtrading cycle. You can't accept ending the day in peace. You want to end it satisfied. And satisfaction here means emotion. When the market doesn't deliver, you create your own storm, and that's how evaporated profit turns into self-loathing. But there is a turning point, and it doesn't happen in technique, it happens in awareness. It arises the moment you recognize the impulse before acting, when you feel the urgency and decide not to obey it. That is the instant when the amateur trader dies and the professional is born, because true control is not acting, it's choosing not to act. Every time you ignore an impulse, you reinforce a new neurological pattern, that of maturity. That's how you train the brain to trade less and earn more. You don't need to fight the impulse like someone facing an enemy. You just need to see it as the echo of the old self, the one that associated movement with safety. When the chart stays still and the heart races, remember the market isn't provoking you, it's your mind asking for stimulus. Breathe. Let the discomfort pass. This is the invisible victory that the financial statement never shows. The victory over yourself. The market doesn't reward those who do more. It rewards those who endure more. Endure boredom, endure waiting, endure the impulse to click. The mature trader understands that true productivity lies in selecting the moment, not in multiplying actions, because overtrading is like shouting in the middle of a symphony. The more noise, the less music. And the final question you need to face is simple. What are you seeking when you enter without reason? Profit, control, or relief? The answer defines your future in trading, because as long as the impulse dominates, profit will only be an interval between two relapses. What destroys the trader is not the mistake itself, but the pattern. The mental impulse is the bridge between the mistake and repetition. It turns a one-time slip into a rooted habit. And the worst part is that this habit is fed by something that seems harmless, the need to feel productive. When you spend hours staring at the chart and do nothing, the mind starts blaming itself. It whispers, I'm wasting time, I need to act. And that's when the cycle restarts. You don't enter because you saw an opportunity. You enter to justify your own presence in front of the screen. The market then becomes a stage to prove to yourself that you are a real trader. But the real trader proves nothing. He waits. There is a subtle but brutal difference between acting and reacting. The professional acts, the amateur reacts. The professional observes the context, identifies the pattern, calculates the risk, and executes the plan. The amateur reacts to boredom, euphoria, or fear. He doesn't trade with the market. He trades with his emotions. And when emotion is the guide, every decision becomes a roulette wheel. The feeling of control is just a mirage that covers internal chaos. Because every time you enter outside the plan, you're not trading the price, you're trading your peace. Have you noticed how the mind looks for excuses to trade? The market is moving, I can't stay out. This candle looks good. Volume is rising, I'll try. The problem is that most of the time these excuses are just rationalizations to justify the addiction. The impulse creates the desire, and the intellect comes afterward to build a logical narrative. It's like the dopamine addict who tells himself, I'll just take a quick look at the chart. But that look turns into an entry, which turns into a loss, which turns into a spiral. The trader doesn't lose due to lack of knowledge, he loses because he can't stand the silence between trades. This silence is the battlefield of the mind. It's there that the professional strengthens himself and the amateur destroys himself, because the amateur trader sees the market as a hunting ground, the professional as a field of meditation. One seeks adrenaline, the other clarity. One seeks emotion, the other precision. The market rewards the second, because in the end, profit is the consequence of a mind that has learned not to react. The real edge is not in the strategy, it's in self-control. That's why two traders can use the same methodology and have completely different results. One operates from the plan, the other from emotion. Every time you give in to the impulse, you reprogram your brain for failure. The limbic system takes control and the rational cortex shuts up. You return to primitive instinct, hunt, fight, flight, and the market is the worst place in the world to react like that, because it doesn't forgive impulses. It rewards those who wait for the exact moment when the risk is less than the probability. But the impatient mind is incapable of waiting. It needs the now. It confuses movement with progress and action with power. But in trading, true power is restraint. The professional understands that every operation carries an invisible cost, the emotional cost. Every trade outside the plan drains mental energy, reduces focus, and increases internal noise. And when the noise is too loud, you start losing sensitivity to the market. Everything looks like a signal, nothing is clear. You start seeing patterns where there is only chaos. And the more you force entries, the more the market returns confusion to you. In the end, you're no longer trading the chart, you're trading your own fragmented mind. But the impulse doesn't arise on the chart, it arises in moments outside of it. It is a reflection of a life that has lost the natural rhythm of patience. You live in a world that glorifies haste, immediacy, instant results. Everything is one click away. And trading seems like the pinnacle of that control. Just press a button and make money. But that button is a mirror. It reveals what you're really seeking. Most seek power, validation, emotion. You seek consistency. And that's why few survive. Consistency is the opposite of impulse. While the impulse wants intensity, consistency wants repetition. While the impulse seeks dopamine, consistency seeks calm. And that requires mental re-education. You need to teach your brain that staying out is a victory, not a loss. That patience is productivity. That doing nothing is sometimes the most profitable decision of the day. This is the internal revolution that separates the disciplined trader from the reactive one. Observe the contrast. The amateur trader enters too early, exits too late, and repeats. He is always trying to recover, always reacting. The professional trader, on the other hand, starts the day with a thesis. He knows where he will act and, above all, where he will not. He prepares himself not to trade. He accepts boredom as part of the process. He knows that trading all the time is like trying to surf every wave. Sooner or later, one of them swallows you. The secret is to choose the right wave, and that requires time, focus, and emotional detachment. The mental impulse is the saboteur of the long term. It destroys emotional compounding. Every impulsive trade breaks a link in the chain of confidence, and when confidence breaks, you return to the cycle of doubt, fear, and compensation. You start testing new strategies, changing the setup, blaming the market. But nothing changes because the problem isn't on the chart, it's in the operator. The market is neutral, it just amplifies who you are. If you are disciplined, it will multiply you. If you are impulsive, it will destroy you with the same force. The mature trader is not the one who never feels the impulse, but the one who recognizes it and moves through it. He knows the impulse is not an order, it's a reflex. He has learned to observe discomfort without reacting to it. He understands that the most valuable victory does not appear on the financial statement, but in the moment he decides not to click. This is the victory that few celebrate, but that builds true freedom, the freedom of not being a slave to your own mind. There is a phrase that should be written on every platform. The market doesn't defeat you, you defeat yourself. Because in the end, it's always an internal duel. The market is just the mirror. It shows your haste, your fear, your need to prove something. And as long as you don't face that, you'll keep going in circles. You can change strategies 1,000 times, but the mental pattern will remain the same. The cure is not in the method, it's in the mind. Ask yourself, what do you feel when you're out of a trade? Boredom, anxiety, fear of missing out. That answer reveals your true level of emotional mastery. The trader who can't stand the void will never master the market, because the market is made of void. Most of the time it offers nothing. Only those who endure the silence reap the rare moments of clarity, and those moments change everything. The professional understands that the game is 90% waiting, 10% execution. The amateur inverts the equation and lives frustrated. You need to stop measuring your progress by the number of trades. Real progress is measured by the quality of decisions, by the lightness of the mind at the end of the day. A trader at peace is a trader who understands time. And understanding time is the same as understanding the market, because the market is not made of candles, it's made of patience. Each candle is a portrait of collective behavior, and the more you observe without acting, the more you realize that the real edge is in observing your own behavior. The mental impulse is the noise of the ego trying to prove it still has control. But the ego is the enemy of consistency. It makes you believe that every click is an act of power, when in reality it's a cry for help. Every trade outside the plan is an unconscious look at me, and as long as that impulse exists, trading will continue to be a painful mirror. The cure begins when you allow yourself not to react. The trader who survives is not the smartest, nor the most technical. It's the one who learns to observe his own impulse without identifying with it. And that skill is not innate. It's trained, built, repeated, forged in discomfort. The mental impulse doesn't disappear with time, it transforms. At first it dominates you, then it provokes you, and finally it becomes a reminder, a sign that there is still ego wanting to take command. And when you reach that point, the impulse stops being the enemy and becomes the teacher. Every day the market tests you in silence. It doesn't speak, but it watches. It watches how much you have evolved since the last emotional collapse. It watches whether you have learned to recognize the line between acting and reacting, and every new morning it offers you the same lesson in different clothes. The candle that yesterday looked like opportunity today is a trap. The pattern that yesterday gave you profit today takes away your calm. And it's in this back and forth that the trader is polished. not by the gains, but by the impulses he has learned to tame. But the ordinary trader wants immediate results. He doesn't understand that consistency is the byproduct of accumulated emotional discipline. He wants financial freedom, but rejects the psychological process that sustains it. He wants the prize without paying the price. But the market is merciless with those who try to skip steps. It demands patience, humility, and resilience from you, and when you don't deliver, it educates you through pain. Every overtrade, every unnecessary loss, every destroyed day is a lesson in disguise. You still don't master yourself. There is a metaphor that explains this perfectly. The impulsive trader is like a surfer who tries to force the sea. He paddles non-stop, trying to create waves that don't exist. He exhausts himself, gets irritated, loses the natural rhythm of the ocean. The professional, on the other hand, observes. He understands that the sea doesn't need to be conquered, it needs to be understood. He paddles only when he feels the energy is aligned. The amateur wants to control nature, the professional wants to flow with it, and that's exactly what separates those who destroy the day from those who master it. The ability to synchronize with the market's rhythm, not with the rhythm of their own anxiety. The mental impulse is the saboteur of that synchrony. It disconnects you from observation. It drags you into the noise. And when you're inside the noise, there is no reading, only reaction. The chart stops being a map and becomes a storm. You stop seeing context and start seeing danger in every candle. Everything becomes threat or opportunity, never neutrality. And the trader who can't see neutrality is doomed to live between extremes, euphoria and despair. The market becomes an emotional battlefield when it should be just a mirror of probability. That's why the professional trader cultivates the observer's mind. He has learned to look at the market like someone contemplating the sea. He doesn't demand movement, he recognizes it when it comes. He doesn't react to the absence of signals, he thanks the silence. Because he understands that every minute of calm is preparation for the right moment. The difference is that the mature trader doesn't seek emotion, he seeks clarity. He has learned to like what the amateur avoids, boredom. Because boredom is the cradle of precision. But this maturity requires a kind of humility that few accept, admitting that you don't control the market nor your own mind completely. You only manage probabilities, you only manage reactions. This acceptance is liberating but painful. It destroys the myth of control. And when the myth falls, the impulse tries to resurface with more strength, like a last cry from the ego. It whispers, "You need to act. You need to prove." This is where many break again. They confuse humility with weakness. But humility in trading is the supreme strength. It's what allows you to stay out when everyone is entering. It's what keeps you whole when the market collapses. The professional knows that true profit is not financial, it's psychological. Every time he ignores an impulse, he accumulates confidence. Every time he waits, he gains clarity. Every time he closes the day without forcing an entry, he strengthens the invisible muscle of patience. This is the real compounding, emotional compounding. While others measure progress by P&L, the professional measures it by the level of peace with which he closes the chart, because he understands that money is just the reflection of a disciplined mind, and a disciplined mind is not born from pleasure, it is born from resistance to impulse. The question is, how much of you still depends on emotion to feel alive in the market? This is a tough but necessary question, because as long as trading is your main source of dopamine, you will continue to overtrade. Liberation comes when the market stops being the place where you seek to feel something, and becomes the place where you practice who you already are. Trading is just the mirror, never the creator of your identity. Those who enter to prove themselves leave broken. Those who enter to understand themselves leave transformed. There is something almost spiritual in this process. The market becomes a silent temple where you confront your deepest addictions. The impulse to overtrade is just the reflection of the ego that still hasn't learned to trust time. It's the same ego that prays for patience but demands immediate results. It's the same one that says, "I just want consistency," but despairs on the first day without a signal. It's the same one that confuses faith with control. And until that ego is broken, the cycle repeats. Because the market doesn't give you what you want, it gives you back what you are. The professional trader is, above all, a monk in the midst of chaos. He understands that each candle is a disguised prayer, each pause is a chance to observe his own heart. He doesn't fight the impulse, he accepts it as part of the process. And by accepting it, the impulse loses power. It stops being a command and becomes a warning. The professional feels the impulse, smiles and says, "I know you," and chooses not to click. This is true self-control, not the one that comes from repression, but the one that comes from awareness. Over time, the trader realizes that overtrading is not the central problem, it's just the symptom of a mind that still hasn't learned to deal with emptiness. And emptiness is inevitable. There are days when the market will give you nothing, and that doesn't mean you're stagnant, it means you're learning to respect the cycle. The amateur seeks growth in a straight line, the professional understands that growth is spiral. Sometimes you seem to go back, but in reality you're leveling up. Every day you don't destroy, you build. Every day you don't react, you evolve. In the end, the mental impulse that pushes you to overtrade is the same one that calls you to transformation. It is proof that you still feel. And feeling is good as long as you learn not to be a slave to the feeling. The market doesn't want you to be cold, it wants you to be conscious. It doesn't demand perfection, it demands presence. And presence is the opposite of haste. When you are present, the impulse loses speed. It still appears, but you observe it like someone watching a wave break far away without needing to swim to it. This is the maturity that the market tries to teach you every day. The mind of a disciplined trader is not free of impulses, it is free from the power they once had over him. The difference is subtle, but it defines destinies. You will never completely eliminate the desire to click, the temptation to recover a loss, the urge to make the day pay. Those voices don't disappear. They just lose authority when you learn to hear them without obeying, and that's when the game changes. Because the market stops being the enemy and becomes the mirror that reflects your emotional evolution. Every time you recognize an impulse and choose silence, you prove that you are winning the only adversary that really exists, yourself. The amateur trader lives enslaved to stimulus. He needs adrenaline to feel alive. He feeds on the emotional ups and downs like a gambler who confuses luck with purpose. When he wins, he feels invincible. When he loses, he feels unworthy. The professional, on the other hand, lives at a steady pace. He knows that neither profit makes him greater nor loss makes him lesser. He has learned to see himself beyond the result. And this is the freedom that money can never buy. The freedom of not depending on euphoria to continue. The mature trader doesn't seek emotion, he seeks evolution, but there is an uncomfortable truth. As long as you associate trading with the need to prove something, the mental impulse will continue to win. Because with every loss, you won't just be losing money, you'll be wounding your ego. And the wounded ego reacts, it wants revenge, it wants immediate redemption, and the result is predictable. Overtrading, impulsiveness, guilt, frustration. The perfect cycle of self-sabotage. The professional who survives has learned to break this cycle at its source. He separates identity from result. He knows that a loss does not define him. He doesn't need to take revenge on the market because he understands that the market didn't offend him. He just executes probabilities. The one who gets offended is the ego, and the ego doesn't know how to lose. Notice, the mental impulse is just the reflection of the fear of losing control, and the fear of losing control comes from the illusion that control is possible. The trader wants to dominate the market, but true dominance is internal. It's not on the chart, it's in the breath. It's not in the entry, it's in the pause. The trader who learns to pause turns every moment of waiting into self-control training. He stops being a candle reactor and becomes an observer of himself, and that's where the curve changes. Not at the point where you get more right, but at the point where you get less wrong because you don't react to the impulse. The market is not made for those who seek pleasure, it's made for those who endure discomfort. Every trade outside the plan is an escape from that discomfort. It's the mental shortcut to avoid facing boredom, uncertainty, and emptiness. But every shortcut has a price, and the price of haste is the repetition of pain. The trader who tries to escape discomfort ends up living in it permanently. The trader who accepts it transcends. Patience, in the end, is the purest form of faith that exists in trading. It's saying, I don't need to act now. The right moment will come. And it always comes for those who know how to wait. Think about how many times you destroyed a day just because you couldn't accept that it was already enough. The profit was there, the duty done, but the impulse said, just one more. That phrase is the death sentence of consistency, because it comes from the same root that created the addiction, the inability to feel complete. As long as profit doesn't fill the emotional void, the impulse will always return. The trader who seeks emotion is never satisfied. The trader who seeks mastery is, because he understands that the real gain is internal. It's the feeling of ending the day in peace, not ending at the peak of adrenaline, and perhaps that's the market's harshest lesson. It doesn't want you to beat others, it wants you to beat yourself. It doesn't measure who is smarter, it measures who is more stable. It rewards those who resist. The consistency everyone seeks is not technical, it's emotional. It's the ability to repeat healthy behaviors when the mind wants to deviate. It's following the plan even when emotion asks for haste. It's accepting boredom as part of the profession. It's saying no to immediate pleasure and yes to long-term freedom. You can study all the strategies in the world, but as long as the impulse rules, none of them will work. Because the impulsive mind turns any edge into noise. The real edge is not the hit rate, it's the ability to remain lucid under pressure. And lucidity is the opposite of haste. A lucid trader doesn't react to the market, he listens. He knows that the silence between trades is where profit lives. The amateur seeks trades, the professional seeks state of mind. So every time you feel that impulse to click, remember, this is the test. The market isn't asking for action, it's asking for awareness. If you give in, you'll return to the same cycle. If you wait, you'll evolve. Every ignored impulse is a step toward freedom. Every day you don't destroy is a victory. Every time you close the chart in peace, you win the invisible game that most never notice. The market is not the field where you make money, it's the field where you discover yourself. And profit is just the echo of inner transformation. The trader who understands this trades less, lives more, and finally realizes that the game was never about money, but about consciousness. The mental impulse will continue to exist, but you will no longer be the same person who reacts to it. And in that moment, the market recognizes you, because the trader who masters his own impulse has already conquered the only edge that is never lost: serenity. The market doesn't defeat you. You defeat yourself when you believe you need to act all the time to prove you're in control. But real control is not acting when everything in you wants to react. The market doesn't reward the smartest nor the fastest, it rewards those who can stay long enough without destroying themselves. In the end, the consistent trader is simply the collector of days when he chose silence instead of impulse.